And top stories always brought to you by Vodafone Together We Can. Aided by its majority side in Parliament, government had determined to do whatever it takes to have the controversial e-levy considered by MPs under a certificate of urgency. But after a night of confusion and violence in Parliament with MPs exchanging blows, the consideration of the levy will now have to wait till mid-January, the earliest.
We have no information as to the whereabouts of Mr. Speaker. The leadership of the majority has not been informed of the reasons why Mr. Speaker is unavoidably absent this evening from the Chamber of Parliament. We see this as a grand political partisan design to frustrate us.
Let's not pretend that we in this house do not know that Speaker is going through treatment. And definitely, Speaker gets exhausted and will not be able to sit the whole day.
Honourable members, because we don't have a division room, I'm advised that the agreement is that we'll all file out and then the yes will come and they are counted. After that, the noes will come and they are counted. But let me put on record that as soon as I leave the seat, I'm entitled to vote.
We will say that it's unfortunate, it's regrettable, yes, but then it serves a purpose. Sometimes you need to do the wrong thing for the right reason. We need to do that to save our constitution and our parliament from being used as a tool to serve somebody's interests, whims and caprices.
Honourable members, under the circumstances, we are joining the House tomorrow, 9 o'clock in the forenoon.
So they returned this morning, but it was obvious there was no way the House can continue working with many members nursing their wounds from the previous night. The House has now been adjourned till January 18th. Minority Leader Harun Idrisu says government must use the break to consult broadly on the e-levy.
We need to keep the peace and stability of the country, and more particularly its democracy and the ethos that we have developed. Everywhere where functional democracies have prospered is where minority rights are respected and not jettisoned to the dustbin or ignored. There is just one more issue which remains unresolved. The animal called the e-levy. We are now being told it's electronic transfer, not even electronic transactions as it was introduced. And for all intents and purposes, we have studied the bill. It is more or less movement of money tax. Anytime you move money, then you pay a tax. We don't see that happening anywhere in the world. It will be a disincentive for foreign direct investment, even for attraction of investment into our country. But investors will look at your tax regime and the character of it. And yesterday, I sought to explain what has just happened on the floor should give President Nana Addo Akufo-Addo the opportunity to reach out to the highest leadership of the political opposition in the country to engage in order that for purposes of fiscal consolidation, we can reach some compromise as to what, without necessarily denying government interest. But with him demonstrating that he will cut profligate expenditure and then some discipline. So arguably what has happened is to allow for deeper consultations on the way forward, on the nature of what ought to be done about raising revenue for government. And that will not support it.
We are unresolved, unequivocally, that will not support it in its current form, character, and nature. And yesterday I sought to explain to you, ladies and gentlemen of the media, President Nana Dankwa himself and the Minister of Finance do not even understand what they are doing. When you say that telecos have agreed to lower.
Because the telecos were not charging any legalized link to begin with. Two is MTN, which has this P2P, person-to-person transfer, which was at 1% at one and 1% at the other end. Ghanaians must be adequately informed that this tax even means 3.75% illegally. It's not going to be 1%.
Because currently Vodafone doesn't charge any percent. So if you don't even have, if you say MTN 1%, but 0.25, what about the other telecos? But more importantly, Ghanaians must understand that President Akufo-Addo doesn't understand the tax he's introducing. MTN charges on
fees, even levies on fees, and charges and levies on transactions. Use yourself as a good example.
So that's Haruna Drisu there, and apologies that we're doing the live, and it was flipping between the live and the phone connection there. But talking about consulting broadly, using the break, the majority leader, Evans Mensah, rejects suggestions his side have not worked to build consensus on this particular matter, and others in the House.
I think that people want to suggest that we have not been building consensus. I think I've spoken to this matter. I'm the majority leader. I've been a minority leader for 8 years. The current speaker has been a majority leader before. Then for the side of when I was a minority leader, the Honorable Cletus Abuka also served at one time as the majority leader. The Honorable Dr. Ben Kumbo at one time also served as the majority leader. For 8 years, I was the minority leader. I'll tell you, and the world should know, there was not one single occasion, that the leaders of the majority at the time invited me to a discussion. Not once, including Badmin himself, as a majority leader for 4 years. Not once, one occasion did he invite me to his office for any discussion on the way forward for us as a country. The president, Nana Akufo-Addo, on four different occasions, has, through me, invited the leadership of the House, including Right Honorable Speaker, and then the members in leadership on the other side, for us to meet and dialogue on the way forward. That was even when we had 169. On 4 occasions. President Mills did not do that once. President Mahama, for 4 years, not once. So if it comes to building consensus and uniting the House, if they turn around to say that, we are not doing that, I'm sorry. It is palpable untruth.
Well, the issue that had triggered the violence in Parliament last night revolved around the decision of the first Deputy Speaker of Parliament, Joseph Usu, to cast his ballot, although he had presided over the division. Now, Mr. Evans Mensah says that the first Deputy Speaker did no wrong.
On the other hand, if he came back and said the second Deputy Speaker was doing a good job, so he was, perhaps after taking his medication, going to be on the floor, as a member of parliament, he was entitled to a vote. So either way, whether presiding or on the floor, a deputy speaker is not forbidden by any rule, any constitutional prohibition or standing orders from having a casting vote. So why the injection of violence with people moving, the minority moving from their place to come and physically prevent the deputy speaker from assuming the chair? Why? In parliament, we debate issues with brain power, not brawn. With brain power, not brawn.
And that's the majority leader there arguing out his point on the issue regarding whether or not the Joseph Osu in an acting position can still cast his ballot. So what happens now that the issue has now been deferred to next year? Let me bring in a member on the Finance Committee in Parliament from the NDC side. He's also the ranking on the Mines and Energy Committee in Parliament, John Jinapor. Mr. Jinapor, I'm grateful that you could join on Top Story.
Thank you.
So now has been adjourned. Yesterday, your committee, of course, by majority decision, recommended to the House for it to be considered under a certificate of urgency. We all saw what happened. Is there an indication what will happen now between now and 18th when Parliament returns?
Well, what it means is that that recommendation is still in abeyance. Indeed, the Committee of Finance doesn't even have any authority to approve the bill. The only thing the committee can do is to make a recommendation to the plenary. And that recommendation would either be that accepts or rejects, subject to all the clauses that we seek to amend. Even at committee, when we seek to amend clauses, we need to take it to plenary for plenary to debate and adopt same. The bill itself did not come up for discussion on the floor. And so as it stands, the only bone of contention was whether the bill should be taken under certificate of urgency, which meant that we needed to suspend the 48-hour window under the standing orders. That is what led to the brouhaha. And so what we will be expecting is that the Speaker at the appropriate time, because bear in mind, the suspension was Sunday, which means we do not know exactly when we are coming back. What will happen now is that leadership, in consultation with the Speaker, would meet, build consensus, fix a date, and invite us. Then when we go, we ought to determine whether we should take everything throughout one single day or we take our time and go through the process. I think that is what will happen. But clearly learning from what has happened, it means that consensus ought to be built. It means that further engagement. I listened to the majority leader. It is true, maybe you might not have been invited to a meeting, but given the current architecture in Parliament, vis-a-vis the numbers, I think that we shouldn't compare it as if it was the same when one side had an absolute majority. And when that majority had a speaker, we have a different situation now. I think that all of us should try and engage further. I recall the Minister of Finance holding a press conference and stating that on e-levy he was going to engage further. I'm a member of the Finance Committee. Throughout that 1 month window, the Minister never invited us. One would have thought that at least, if not for anything, the Minister would have invited the Finance Committee or some members of the Finance Committee, even to a breakfast meeting.
But his reps were in the meeting, were they not? In the meetings that he did. His reps on the Finance Ministry were in the meetings you held.
Which of them?
At the consideration at the committee level, no Finance Ministry official was there?
No, what I'm saying is that the Minister of Finance held a press conference and talked about so many other issues and said, as for the e-levy, he wants to consult further and engage further. When you appear before a committee, it's a committee that will fix its date, takes its time to consider a bill. You are only coming to answer questions in respect of the bill. That is not further engagement. That was not at his instance. But if you want to engage further, you ought to reach out to people. I'm saying that I thought, it's subject to him, he can take his decision. I thought as finance minister, he would have invited members of the finance committee at least, or leadership of parliament. Can we have a meeting? This is why I want to do this. He would take concerns, some suggestions, go and input it into the bill even before coming to parliament. Be that as it may, I think that we ought to still move forward. We are opposed to it. We've stated it clearly. They've insisted that they still want to maintain it. At our earlier meeting, they had indicated they were willing to reduce the e-levy even to a lower rate. And Honorable Fanyamaken confirmed it on your program during Newsnight. Unfortunately, the minister insists that he wants to do the 1.75. Let me put this on record. The minority side can only push to a certain level. If Ghanaians are not interested in this levy and they don't want it, we must hear more of their voices. We are determined to do our part. But other people who are equally opposed to this bill also ought to speak up so that the minister and government would listen to the people of Ghana and do what is right and proper.
What precisely do you want to see from others beyond yourselves in Parliament?
You've heard our voices, haven't you? We've canvassed, we've spoken to the media. I know a lot of people who are against this e-levy. And if you were to do a referendum today, I can tell you that a majority of Ghanaians are against this e-levy. I'm encouraging them that we, together with them, let our voices be heard. Let government know that Ghanaians are not happy with this e-levy. At least. We are against it. We've stated or in unequivocal terms. But the minister is not even willing to come down by even 1%. I find that unfortunate.
Let me ask you for clarity on this, because when this question had come up, the majority side have said that it is at the committee level that the negotiations and the conversations can lead to a reduction in, say, 1.75 to 1%. Was that even entertained among yourselves at the committee level when this was being considered?
I personally asked the minister, the minister, even though we on the NDC side are against this e-levy, in the interest of the ordinary Ghanaian, are you willing to climb down a little to cushion them, at least from your side, not from our side? He said no. He had a revenue target, and as far as he had a revenue target, he would insist that it should be 1.75. It came up at committee. And then we suggested that, look, this is a serious matter. Let's invite the Ghana Telecom Chamber. Let's invite the Momo Association. Let's invite other civil society and also take their perspectives so that the committee will be informed. The chairman said no. We voted and lost. They said we shouldn't even take their concerns. We rushed it to Parliament and you saw what happened. So sometimes I think that we should also, especially on government side, hasten cautiously. If we are taking just 48 hours to seek the views of others and to consult further, even as a committee, we probably won't be where we are now. We avoided the 48 hours and we are going for almost 1 month.
So the majority decision that the committee's recommendation was reflecting and was going to go before the plenary for, it also recommends 1.75?
It recommends 1.75. The issue of 1.75, we lost it at the committee. We even proposed a lower, because we had a strategy that at least if we can't get the e-levy scrapped and we lose that leg, can we do something to at least cushion Ghanaians? That was the fallback position. Our original position is don't introduce it now. But in the event that you lose that through a vote, can we propose a reduction? We did that. The majority insisted that once the minister says he wants 1.75, so be it. And that is what reflected at the committee. I'm talking of the committee.
So you say indefinite adjournment, that means you still don't know when you're going to come back. Some have suggested that it's possible that you could be recalled to consider this. Is this something that you entertain?
I think the Speaker would determine that in consultation with leadership. I would also advise leadership, especially the majority side, that they should try and consult the Speaker. And when you call the Speaker and you don't get him or you don't reach him, exercise some amount of patience. The world will not end in one day. I heard them saying that they were trying him yesterday and they couldn't get him on phone.
Yes.
Yes, but be patient.
I mean, how is he though? How is Abang Babin doing?
I think he should be doing fine. He should be doing fine. I haven't met him. I haven't spoken to him. I'm sure leadership will reach him. But look, all of us fall sick. That is normal. And when we fall sick, we need to take a backstage, rest and recuperate. All of us, including yourself and a lot of people listening. So if somebody is not well, that shouldn't be a tango. In any case, in his absence, the speaker, the first deputy speaker, sits in. And I heard them talking about a casting vote. Just Google what is a casting vote. A casting vote even comes in when there's a tie. But when you say that there's a division, we are going to vote, but you will vote. And in the process, you want to swap, only to come and tell us that you are going to take medication. Please. I mean, we're not kids.
Very finally, this is on a lighter note out of curiosity. Where were you when the fight pie on the floor?
Yesterday.
Yes.
I was in the chamber. Well, you wanted to see me in action, eh?
Yes. I wanted to see you in action. You disappeared.
You know what somebody said? He says it does appear that the NDC has 3 lives. That on a different day, a certain group comes, on another day, another group comes. But I think that we should pipe down. Let's try and build consensus. Let's listen to the people of Ghana. One person cannot be an oasis of knowledge. All these things we are raising, these are legitimate concerns, my brother. Go and look at the Schedule 4, 5. If you read that construct, it does appear that any transaction you do as an individual through the banks, they will charge you 1.175. Of course, ESLA has reached out to me and explained further. But if we don't listen to each other, and we think that we have 138, so we can bulldoze our way through the house, we are going to have serious challenges going forward. And let me be frank with you, until all of us begin to change our attitude and listen to each other, we won't make progress in that chamber.
I'm grateful, John Junapo. He is a member of the Finance Committee, ranking member on the Mines and Energy Committee. You heard him say, we talking about whereabouts of the Speaker, Abang Babin. Well, Muntaka Mubarak, who is a minority chief whip, gave a hint. He says he may have been away last night because of health reasons.
Let's not pretend that we in this house do not know that Speaker is going through treatment. And definitely, Speaker gets exhausted and will not be able to sit the whole day.
But what about Joe Owusu himself? The violence in Parliament had started when the first Deputy Speaker got up to allow the second Deputy Speaker to take his seat and act as Speaker. But because Joe Owusu had announced earlier that he will go and vote if he leaves his chair, the NDC side were determined to seize that chair in an attempt to stop the second Deputy Speaker from acting as Speaker. But today, the Majority Leader, Evans Mensah, had been explaining that Joe Owusu only got up for health reasons too.
The pressing, is it the case that a speaker can't even excuse himself to visit the loo? Is it the case?
Was this the case?
The man was indisposed. He was shivering. And he went to the clinic. The record is there. So we had to persuade him to come and sit. He was in the chamber and he was shaking like a leaf. We had to go and prevail on him to come and preside. Of course, if he's presiding, given his own long tenure in Parliament, his own understanding of the rules and procedures in Parliament, we thought that to be able to navigate crisis periods much more with respect to the second Deputy Speaker, much more than the second Deputy Speaker. But it was getting too much for him. So he said he wanted to excuse himself, to take his medication, and then perhaps to come back if he felt okay, or perhaps maybe to sit somewhere.
Just for clarity, so he was excusing himself not to come and engage in the voting that was going on? Is that a clarity?
What if he did? What if he did to take his medication, he came, voting was not over, and he thought that because somebody else was presiding, he could participate in that? What of that? Is that any illegality in that? There's no illegality.
So If you're wondering where Joe Owusu also left and why he did, that's your explanation. Well, Joe Owusu himself has been speaking to us today on the controversial subject of whether or not a presiding speaker, while acting, can also vote. This is his opinion. He says there's nothing that stops him from doing so.
The rules they themselves read of that 1193, it says that the person presiding will not have his original vote whilst presiding. So when you leave the seat, are you still presiding? And why can't I leave the seat? Yesterday, the speaker started until after about an hour and a half. He called me to come and take over from him. I was not feeling very well. So within 1 hour, I also asked the second deputy speaker to take over for me. This is a regular thing we do every day. We change, go back and change. I recall in 2018, around Christmas, I had gone home. It was around 2 a.m. when I was called. The proceedings are still going on. They need me to come and take over from the current speaker. At that time, was the deputy speaker. So I quickly changed and drove back to Parliament. So changing over is a regular feature in the work of the speaker. At the point when we get to the division, the whole proceedings are a new proceeding, start afresh. And therefore, I can change over and then leave the seat for the second deputy speaker after he has voted. And this has become necessary because of our current circumstances.
So that's Joe Owusu there. There's more on this, including the Christian Council condemning the violence on the floor. We're going to hear that. Plus also, with government determined to, raise a bit of revenue from the e-levy. Now that it has been postponed indefinitely, what happens to government's plan? Because we are entering into 2022 and they will need the money. We'll be speaking on that with experts on what this means for government revenue plans and targets. Stay with us.